Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Marcioni, one of the school counselors here at Piccowaxen, and tonight we are going to be talking about court selection and the process. This is going to be for sixth graders going to seventh graders going to eighth grade, and eighth graders going to ninth grade. Ms. Beatty, the other school counselor here, will be joining me back and forth as we present this. We also have Miss Lewis, our administrator, who is going to be joining us as well. Miss Beatty and Miss Lewis, when I'm not presenting, I'll check the chat, and then when I am presenting, can you all check the chat as well? Okay. And we'll make sure that we check the chat as we go through it, and any questions that we haven't answered throughout the presentation, we'll go through it at the end as well. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to talk about tonight is that we are changing the way we do things when it comes to electives starting next year. And what that means is going forward, we are going to be kind of following the high school model when it comes to electives. So, for example, this year, we did not do that. So if a student was taking art in seventh grade, they would take art two. If they were taking art in eighth grade, they would take art three. Starting next year, we're going to be following the same high school plan. So, for example, if I'm taking art for the first time as an eighth grader, I'm going to be taking art one next year. And that's the same for art, general music, computer science, STEM, band, chorus, and orchestra. So we're going to have more mixed classes going into the 2025-26 school year. If a student, let's say, didn't take art one as a sixth grader, but took art two as a seventh grader, we're still going to let them go to art three as an eighth grader. We're not going to push them backwards. So if they're in art two now, they would go to art three next year, even if they didn't have art one. Okay. For gateway to technology, it's a little bit different. Those students well, first of all, gateway to technology doesn't have one or two. It's just two different types of gateway to technology. We have automation and robotics, and we have design and modeling. Automation and robotics, our seventh graders are taking that this year, and design and modeling, our sixth graders are taking that this year. So next year, if you are a student that wants to continue a gateway to technology, as long as you haven't taken that particular class yet, you can take it. If you've taken both automation, robotics, and design and modeling, you cannot take it again. And again, this just means as we go through next year and going forward, we're going to have more mixed classes across the board, at least for electives.
All right, so these are the steps that we're taking. So uh, this month, the teachers have already recommended the core classes. They've put them on the paper form that was sent home with your students this week, and then they've also put them in Synergy. So Tuesday and Wednesday, me and Mr. Marcioni went into social studies classes, and we gave a very similar presentation to the students. And then at the end, we gave them their paper course selection sheet. Okay. So they have these forms, they can bring them home. If they were absent, we do have some of them. So we'll be getting those students who were absent this week. But they do have those if they were here one of those days. So they can look at them with you. And then next week on Monday, they can start inputting them on Synergy, which we will talk about in a little bit how to do that. So they are going to fill out their electives on their paper sheet, and then starting Monday through Friday, it will be open on Synergy to input them there. By Friday, they should bring back that paper form and give it to their social studies teacher. And same thing, they should have it input in Synergy by Friday as well. After that is done and we get all those forms back and all that is input on Synergy, the following week, me and Mr. Marcioni are going to pull each student during their social studies class and just go over to make sure that review their choices and make sure that they're taking the right courses and confirm for next year. Okay?
One thing I want to add, Ms. Beatty, is that I
Yep.
told a lot of my students today. So they got the course selection sheets today. Some of them might not get it until Friday, depending if they were absent or not. It's not going to open up in Synergy until next week, like you said. So what I told a lot of the students is go ahead and talk to your family, look at the program of studies. We have two program of studies. We have the middle school program of studies and the high school program of studies, which we'll go over in a little bit. Look it over, talk to your students, pick the classes. Once it opens up in Synergy on Monday, what I suggested to all of the students I talked to is go ahead and enter it on Monday, get it out of the way. This way you get it back to your social studies teacher ahead of time. So yes, it's due by Friday, but if they want to turn it in on Tuesday, that's great. The sooner they get it into the teacher, the less chance they're going to lose the form. So,
All right.
okay, moving on to the next slide.
All right. So this is kind of helpful. The next two slides on how to choose electives, and this is again for our sixth graders going to seventh grade and our seventh grade going into eighth grade. So we do run on a block schedule. We have A day and B day. We have 4 blocks each day. The 4 blocks will obviously be their core classes. So their math, their English, their science, their history. So those are 4 classes automatically. Um, and then if they have labs, which we'll see on the next slide, it'll have a visual that'll explain that a little bit better. But students also have to take a quarter of health and a quarter of PE each year. All students are also required to take a fine arts elective each year. So that means they either have to take chorus, band, or orchestra, or, and those are full year electives, or they can take semester art or semester general music, but they do have to pick one of those each year. So once they're done with those electives, those required electives, then I would say to fill in the rest of their electives. So if you go to the next slide, Mr. Marcioni, I think that's like a really good visual for this.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So as you can see, there's 8 classes because we have 4 blocks each day. The first 4 blocks are filled with their core academic courses, which again, these are teacher selected. They're already chosen. And then, so for here on the 5th block, it shows they have a quarter of health, a quarter of PE. Again, that's required. And then they would have to pick another elective that's a semester, so half a year. Okay. For the 6 and 7, it shows if they have a math lab or a lit lab, then they would take them there. Or they can, if they don't have to take those, they can pick a full year elective or 2 semester electives. And as you can see for the last block again, they have, even if they do have labs, they will have that block to pick either a full year elective or 2 semester classes of their choice after they've, picked the classes that they need. So if we go to the next slide, the top half shows available electives for next year's 7th graders, so our current 6th graders. And then the bottom 2 is for our current 7th graders or next year's 8th graders.
So I'm going to
So,
go into a little more detail on this one.
okay.
So for the rising sixth graders to seventh grade, full year classes, this is the first year they could take Spanish 1. So they can either take Spanish 1 or they could take Heritage and Native Spanish, 1, 2, or 3, depending on their level. For HNS, that's a class, it's a Spanish class. Both those classes give you high school credit. The HNS class is for students that speak it at like the native, they're native speaking. Their family speaks it, they speak it at home, things like that. So if that's your students, we will have a conversation with them, and then they will take a test in the spring of this year to find out what level HNS they would be at, whether it be 1, 2, or 3, depending on their ability level. Okay. Anyone that's not native speaking, they would take Spanish 1. And again, these are high school credit courses. Then Spanish 1's a full year class, Heritage, HNS is a full year class, band, orchestra, and chorus are full year classes. For half year classes for 6th and 7th grade, 6th graders going to 7th grade, you have your semester PE, art, general music, computer science, STEM. Journalism is a class that was not offered to them as 6th graders. It is a half year class. It does not count as an art. It does not count as a technology class. But during that class, they're creating a student newsletter that gets distributed once a quarter. In addition, we have the computing solutions class. And then we have the gateway to technology, the automation robotics class, and then gateway to technology, design, and modeling. Okay. Now, seventh to eighth grade, they have even more options now as electives. So, of course, those students that were taking Spanish 1 this year, if they're successful, they can take Spanish 2. Those students that were in HNS this year, whether it be 1 or 2, they would go into the next level of HNS. We have band, orchestra, and chorus. And like I said earlier, if it is the first time you're taking any like band, orchestra, or chorus, they would go into number 1 versus 2 or 3. Okay. The two big classes that we're really pushing all of our eighth graders to take next year are exploring computer science and introduction to engineering design. Both of those classes are high school level courses and they're technology credit courses. And for those of you that have older students that are in high school, one of the requirements for graduation is having a tech ed credit. So exploring computer science, any student can take exploring computer science. There's no prerequisite for that class. For introduction to engineering design, there is a prerequisite. They have to be either in Algebra 1 as an eighth grader, or they have to have Algebra 1 previously. Now, the other cool thing about these two classes, Introduction to Engineering Design is the first class if the student wants to go on a pathway of Project Lead the Way Engineering. And Exploring Computer Science technically is the first class they would take if they wanted to go into that pathway of computer science in high school. And again, remember, Exploring Computer Science is a class with no prerequisites, so any student can take it. But Introduction to Engineering Design, they have to be in Algebra 1 or have taken Algebra 1 before. Okay, so those are the classes that are offered those are full year classes. And then for seventh graders going to eighth grade, we have our semester PE, our art, general music, computer science, STEM, journalism, computing solutions, and then we have our gateway to technology, automation, robotics, and design and modeling.
Oh,
So again,
Mr. Marchioni, they can't take both of those classes. They have to take one or the other. They can't take
yes,
ECS and IED. They have to take one or the other.
yes, they have to take one or the other. It's either exploring computer science or introduction to engineering design, not both. Okay. So, and then as I told students today, I'm strongly suggesting that they take one of those classes. Last year was the first year we were offering it to eighth graders, and those eighth graders that chose not to take it, they are now kicking themselves because they realized they would have had one less credit to take in high school as we're doing course selection with those students. And now they're realizing they should have chosen to take that class. Okay. Okay. Ms. Beatty?
All right, so these are the course selection sheets that your students will be bringing home. They look very similar, but obviously they're, you know, sixth grade and seventh grade have a few classes that are different. So on your left side, that's the front. I know it's kind of small, but that is the academic classes. So they would be circled and initialed. Um, there might there was a few that were missing and we tried to get them all before we gave them to the students, but I will say there is a couple that went home where it didn't get circled. If that is you, do not worry. I know there was a group of sixth graders. I believe there was about 8 students who didn't have their social studies circled, but I've looked, it's input and synergy, so when I get them back, I will make sure it's circled on there. um, but it is already input and synergy as well. So we did work hard to make sure, but I do know there are some sixth graders who did not have that circled. So we will, when we get the papers back, we'll make sure that's fixed. But as far the back is where the electives are. So what I told the students to do was to count, how many core classes they're going to have, because some students will have labs and some will not. So they could have anywhere from 4 core classes to 6. If they have, a math lab and a lit lab, they'd have 6. If they only have a math or lit, 5. And if they just have their 4 core classes, 4. Um, and I know you can't really see it, but down at the bottom, there is a area where you can enter that, where Mr. Marchioni's kind of pointing. So I told them just to write that there, so then they know how many slots they have available for their electives. As you can see, PE and health are already chosen. There's an X at the top. And then I told them after, they look at that, I would move over and choose my fine arts credit since that's required. Okay. So again, that's either going to be band, chorus, orchestra. Those are the full year electives, or they can take a semester of art or a semester of general music. All right. So once those are picked, and they see how many other electives they have left over, they can look through the rest of them for, sixth grade going into seventh grade. A lot of the other electives are semester courses unless they decide to take Spanish 1.
And I
They
think
should.
going back to that slide that we showed earlier, that we're going to be sharing this presentation with our parents and students. That one slide that had everything kind of listed out 1 through 8 is a great tool. A lot of our students today were talking about how that was a great visual for them. So I do think that using that when going over this, you'll be able to figure out exactly how many classes you need to pick for your child, for your student.
And I saw in the chat you asked how many total they should have. So they should have 8. But what I'll tell you is that if it's a semester class, that would count as half. So 2 semester classes would equal 1 full year class.
And honestly, it's never going to be 8 classes.
Yeah,
The total number is always going to be different depending on,
right.
because for example, with just the health and PE slot, you're going to have 3 classes fill that one slot up just in one block. So you could have every student's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Mhm. Also, please make sure parents that you're signing the form, your student is signing the form when they turn it back to their social studies teacher. And these are all going back to their social studies teachers. Go to the next one.
All right. So if you move to the next one, very similar. The only differences are on this one, they do have those options on their elective page for those full year classes we talked about, some of the high school credit classes, the exploring computer science, intro to engineering. There are more Spanish classes available to them. But other than that, it is very similar and doing the same thing. They need to pick, they have PE and health there. I would tell them to pick their fine arts and then, continue down. If they had Spanish 1 this year, they can take Spanish 2 next year. And exploring computer science is open to all of them. And as Mr. Marcioni said, if they are in algebra 1 or geometry next year, they can take that intro to engineering class.
And you will see on these course selection sheets that they have codes next to each one of the names. So for example, next to exploring computer science, you're going to see the @ symbol. If you go to the top, @ symbol means it's a high school credit. And also has the star, which means it's a prerequisite involved for the introduction to engineering design class. So,
Yep.
All right, go to the next slide here. Now we go into the high school classes, the high school course selection sheets. So the 2 different high schools have 2 different course selection forms. What you're looking at right now is the McDonough High School course selection form. The big difference between the 2 forms is McDonough High School only put the classes on their form that are for 9th graders. And I will admit there's at least 1 or 2 classes they missed, and I'll explain that in a minute. But so they put only the classes that are for 9th graders. And then the form is about 8.5 by 14, so it's a little bit bigger. Then La Plata, they put, and this is coming, the county wants us to have forms like this where every class is listed in the count, and every class listed for the entire school. So for La Plata, everything on here, those are all the classes that they can take 9th through 12th grade. The difference is they blacked out the ones they can't take in 9th grade, and they kept the ones white, the boxes white, where you can actually take those classes. So you'll see in both forms, the first 4 spots are the English, math, social studies, and science. That's in both the McDonough and the La Plata form. That's where your teachers are going to have marked off their classes, and you'll see that when you see your students' course selection sheet. Okay. From there, we go into the electives, and that's where we're going to see if your students in Spanish 2, they would take Spanish 3. If they're in HNS, actually, if they're in HNS 3, they would go into AP Spanish. And we're having those conversations with the students one-on-one anyway. Let me go through this here. I'm going to start with McDonough's. So you can't really see it, but the first thing I want to say is that for 8th grade going to 9th grade, all students are expected to take half year of health, and a half year of fit for life in 9th grade. It's not mandatory because some students can't fit it on their schedule based on the fact that they have too many other things they want to take. But if you do have the room for it, it is the class you'll have to take. Students will have to take health, half year of health, half year of fit for life in 9th grade. Then when they get to 11th grade, they're going to have a half year of health and a half year of financial literacy. Okay. In addition, every student has to have a technology credit. One credit means 1 full year of class. So every student has to have a technology credit. Every student has to have a fine art credit when they are in high school. The great thing is a lot of our students already have their technology credit because they've taken Exploring Computer Science or they've taken Introduction to Engineering Design. And then the other is the fine art credit. A fine art, it can be Art 1, it can be theater arts, it can be band, strings, or chorus. The difference is with Art 1, once you take Art 1, you can then start taking, once you take that class and pass it, that opens up other art classes down the road. Like then they can get into like photography or ceramics, but they can't take those higher level art classes until they take Art 1. Okay. We talk about technology. That's this side of the form here. Again, I know it's very hard for you to see. My
Sorry.
apologies for that.
Mr. Marcion, did you want all questions in the chat or?
You can verbally ask a question. That's fine.
So I was looking at the McDonough form
Mhm.
a couple nights ago, and the only fine arts that I saw listed was art. So is
Mhm.
there you mentioned
Theater is
theater
on here
art?
as well. Theater is
Okay.
on here as well. Where was it? It's there because I did look at
Okay.
it. I saw it.
Okay.
It is a class they can take, uh, but theater is something that they should be able to take as a 9th grader. So, but that is
Okay.
art and theater. Those are the two real big ones because it's under performing arts. That's why. So you look
Oh,
under
okay.
fine and performing arts, you'll see them down there as well. So this should be theater somewhere in there.
Okay, and then if they have already done that tech credit because they took something that qualified in 8th grade,
Mhm.
they can then, do they need to mark that or they just leave it blank? And the
Okay, so
school will
one thing I
know.
didn't mention yet is that so if they've taken their tech ed credit, that is going to be you don't have to mark it on there because it's already on their transcript. So
Okay,
and the good thing, well, first, any student as of this year, any student taking a high school level course would be Spanish, HNS, Algebra 1, Exploring Computer Science. The credit has always transferred to high school, but now the grade is also transferring to high school. So their GPA that they get in that class will be on their transcript, their high school transcripts.
okay,
Okay. Also, if you look in the second page up top, right here where my little arrow is, that's Introduction to Theater, right there. Can you see
okay,
my
thank you.
pointer? Yeah, no problem.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Just, I'm sorry it's so small. Um,
Okay,
and I'm going to go through some of these programs because we have a lot of CTE programs that are listed here, and there's a slide that's a little easier to read. I'll do that in a minute. As far as now, the one thing I will say with McDonough, we have students that have taken Introduction to Engineering Design this year. So then the next class for them would be, if I go to the Plato one, would be principal. If they want to stick with engineering and do pathway and do project lead the way engineering, the next class with them would be Principles of Engineering. On the La Plata form, on the first page down at the bottom, it has both classes, knowing that they've taken the first one in middle school, they might be taking the second one. The McDonough form, they must have not forgot to do that. So what I have our Introduction to Engineering Design teacher doing is just crossing out where it says Introduction to Engineering Design on the second page and then writing in the class that they should be taking. It was just, unfortunately, they must have missed that when they did these forms this year. So again, he's just If they want to take the second class, if they take in the first one, he's crossing out the Introduction to Engineering Design and he's putting in the Principles of Engineering class in place of it. I just had the conversation with Mr. Kasha today about that. Okay. So it's one thing that is a bit different between the one form and the other. But on the La Plata form, it's clearly stated right there that they can take Principles of Engineering as a second class. The same holds true, by the way, for those students that have taken Exploring Computer Science. If they took Exploring Computer Science, then they can also take the Introduction to Computer Programming as a secondary class, because those are for students that want to go into the computer science pathway. So if they've taken Exploring Computer Science in middle school, they can take Introduction to Computer Programming as a ninth grader, because that's the next step, and they're going into the computer science pathway in high school. Every student that, whether it's La Plata or McDonough, they have to pick, they have 7 total classes a day, which means if they have their 4 core classes, they get to pick 3 electives. And when it comes to their electives, like I said before, the PE or Fit for Life and Health are recommended, but it is not mandatory because some students might not have room on their schedule because you have, let's say a student wants to take Project Lead the Way Biomed. That would mean that they're taking the biomed class as an elective. So that's 4 classes plus biomed. That should be 5 classes. Then on top of that, let's say they're also in performing arts. That's 6 classes because they want to do their band, strings, or chorus. And then let's say they want to continue with their foreign language. Your 7 classes are already filled up. So in those situations, they do not need to take their PE and health their first year. They do offer it during the summer. Usually they offer during the summer for students to take, okay, or other ways to get those classes in. I can't guarantee it, but typically they have other ways of doing it. Once you do all 7 classes, they do want you to pick 3 backup electives, or 3 alternates, in case the classes you've picked or your student has picked are not available. Then you sign it. The student signs it. It comes back to the social studies teacher here. I will say that the for 8th grade, well, for 8th grade is going to 9th grade, if the parent wants to change a class, so they're concerned about a recommendation, they can write a letter to the counselor at the high school. We will attach that letter to this form and send it up there to the high school. Let me go through some of these. So with La Plata included with their course selection sheet, and some of you already know this because you have it. It's kind of like a worksheet or just like instructions, and then on the back it has some information. I've included, since I know some of our students are McDonough, I've included that in this presentation, and I've done this part of the presentation with our students in the building too. So some of the things that it went over, these are some of the important notes to remember that the La Plata shared with the students is: 1, the program of studies for high school has everything they could possibly need to know about high school. So the program of studies, which was linked in the email I sent originally inviting you to this meeting, has any questions you have about high school, it is in the program of studies. I worked as a counselor at high school. Whenever I had a question, I went to that program of studies to get the answer. That's number 1. In a second, I'm going to go through some of the completed pathway options that you have in high school. And like I said before, every student needs to have 7 classes. Well, 7 total periods filled. Okay, I know it's not necessarily going to be 7 classes if they've chosen a half year of PE and a half year of health, and 3 alternate courses. Let's see here. The teachers have already given their recommendations of whether they're going into on-level, honors, or AP courses. There are certain students that have already been talked to from their social studies teacher if they're going into AP US History next year. Also, when it comes to math, the state law requires that students take a math course every year they're enrolled in high school. So every year they're in high school, they need to take a math course. Now, they have to have 2 algebra and 1 geometry class to graduate, but they have to take math every year. So another thing on the La Plata handout that they handed out for students is kind of a cheat sheet for completer pathway options. I think this comes in handy, and it kind of goes through, it starts off, I'll use my pointer. It gives you the pathway. It gives you the grade level you can start the pathway. it gives you the first class you take in that pathway, the second, third, and fourth. So for business management or business, the first class you would take is Principles of Business Management. That's a pathway to graduation. You have the Project Lead the Way Biomed. Okay, and then you start off with the biomed class and you're taking biology as well. By the way, if any of your students want to take biomed, number one, they have to be recommended for honors science class. So be honors earth systems. And then we would switch their class from honors earth systems to honors biology, and then we would give them the biomed class as an elective. Okay, and that's from grades 9 through 10. Project Lead the Way Engineering. A lot of our students, or some of our students, already have that first class, and they would go on to Principles of Engineering and so on. We have the Teacher Academy of Maryland. We have Human Growth at the start, and then they go from there. And that one only starts in 10th grade, though, so they wouldn't start this class, the Teacher Academy of Maryland, in 9th grade. We have computer science, like I said earlier. You start with Explore Computer Science, which you already have some students that have taken it, and then they go into Introduction to Computer Programming. ROTC is now a pathway to graduation. Whether you're going to La Plata or McDonough, ROTC would be a pathway to graduation, and is considered a CTE program. The Fire Rescue Program is considered a CTE program and a pathway to graduation. They would start that either 11th grade or 12th grade. Then we have the Pro Start program, which is basically kind of working through restaurants and food service, and that would start in 9th or 10th grade with food and nutrition. And though it is not a CTE program, they still have language arts here as a pathway, and a lot of our students have already done Spanish 1, Spanish 2, and so on. And then CRD is Career Research and Development, and that doesn't start till 11th and 12th grade, and that's a program where students kind of learn about different careers to kind of get some exposure to see what things are out there so they can kind of figure out what they want to do going forward. And then we have the STEAM programs that we've talked about in the past, and those programs you would apply to in 10th grade going into 11th grade, and that's pharmacy tech, physical rehabilitation, barbering, HVAC, auto tech, and interactive media. So those are programs you would apply to in 10th grade, and then you would start them in 11th grade. You spend half your day at your home school, half your day at Steedham.
Other than the ones that are at Steedham, are the rest of them all offered at both high schools?
Yes, so all the other programs are offered at all home schools, all their, so zone schools. So McDonough or La Plata or any other school in the county.
Okay, and did they have to apply to one of these or
No.
they can?
These
Okay,
are all programs you just have to take the classes for.
okay,
All the ones that they have to apply to, they've already gone down that road and they're waiting to hear back whether they got into those programs or not. And that's like your culinary arts program, your welding program, all the programs that are housed at North Point, or some of them at McDonough, because the dance program is at McDonough. And I think they're moving the graphics program to McDonough as well.
okay, thank you.
Sure. Let's see. So the next form here, I'm sorry, my screen, there you go. Now I can see it better. This is the graduation status report. Ms. Murphy, do you have a question? Ms. Murphy, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Hi, I'm sorry I couldn't unmute.
That's okay.
So I'm sorry, I'm going back to the seventh
That's
going
okay.
into 8th grade real quick.
That's
If
fine.
they are wanting to do band 2 and Spanish 2, does that mean they cannot do intro to engineering designing?
Not at all. It means they can do both as long as they have room on their schedule based on how many labs they've been. I'm going to get to that in a moment. So a lot of students that are maybe going into 8th grade, they might want to do Spanish, band, and the computer class as well. But maybe they were also recommended for like a Lit Lab 4. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit when we get there. There's a form that you can fill out, and I'm going to explain a little more detail about that form and what that means.
Okay,
But
thank you so much.
if they don't have any labs, technically that means they have 4 classes, core classes, and that leaves room for 4 blocks to fill up. And other than that, have the quarter PE, quarter health, they have room to put a whole bunch of other stuff on there if they have no labs. So
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Mr. Marchioni, there's a few questions in the chat specifically about high school.
Okay.
One is about, do they have to take U.S. history in ninth grade.
It's ninth grade is U.S. history. Yes, they take LSN in 10th grade. They take U.S. history in ninth grade.
Okay. And then this next one is if they took IED in eighth grade, they just finished their intro to engineering junior year as opposed to a senior, or are there extra classes?
Okay, so if they finished their introduction to engineering design as an eighth grader,
Yeah.
they would take the next level class in ninth grade.
Okay. Are they going to finish a little bit earlier? I guess that's the question.
They could finish a little bit earlier, yes.
Okay.
But they would have to have that conversation with their counselor because this is the first year we're offering it and the middle school level too.
And one's about if they're accepted to programs, they would pick different electives. But when they get accepted, if they later in the year, if they get accepted to North Point, will they fill out another form?
No, what we'll do is we'll transfer North Point will get the information from us, and then they go ahead and make the adjustments they have to make on their end.
And do you know when CTE programs, when you hear back about?
They said something about, I think it's March, I want to say, but you'll get an email going over whether you've been accepted or you've been waitlisted or you didn't get in, unfortunately. So, but that should be coming out. I want to say March, but I want to double check my emails and see what that timeline is like. Miss Black has her hand up.
Hi, Mr. Marchioni.
Hi.
I had a quick question. I'm Nahaje's mom. If he's interested in the intro to engineering,
Okay.
can he also take intro to engineering design? Because I see it says prerequisite is the prerequisite. So
It's introduction to engineering design introduction to engineering design. That's the name of the class.
okay, so they don't go hand in hand. They're two different classes.
No, introduction to which one are you looking at? Is it at the course selection sheet?
Yeah, I'm looking at the 3 total credits that you have to choose after your core classes. You have to pick a total of 3 credits. So he's interested in the intro to engineering, but also in the flip on the back side of the sheet, the intro to engineering design, and it has a prerequisite beside it.
So what they did was, I understand what you're talking about now. Is it the LaFleda one or the McDonough one?
McDonough.
Okay. So what they did there was they put like the fine arts and they put the classes here that are classes that the requirements. These are their graduation requirements, and they were kind of going over what those classes are. So Introduction to Engineering Design does count as a tech ed credit, which is why it's on that front page. Okay. So they kind of group together all the classes that count things that you have to have to graduate. Okay.
Okay.
But then they also have it on the back page because it's also part of the first class in the pathway to engineering. So what I would say is just put both on there because it's going to be in one class, but just know that it's not going to be in there twice. Like the Introduction to Engineering Design class it's on the front is the same as the class that's on the back.
Okay. So with that being said, he's going to have to pick when I see select 7 total credits, the 4 at the top are the core. So he has to pick 7 more credits. How many more?
3 more. 3 more. So it's total of 7, including the ones picked for him already.
Okay, that's why I was like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's no way that he's going to be able to accomplish that.
There's 7 classes. So think of it this way: a credit is a full year class.
Okay.
So you may have a little more, depending on whether he does the PE and Fit for Life. It's going to be 7 classes, or it'll be 8 classes because those 2 classes will count so it'll be a total of 8.
Okay, so if he's doing the PE and health, he needs to pick 3 more because PE and health is considered one class.
So if you're doing PE and health, that's 1 class. So you have the 4 core classes. PE and health count as 1 because it's a full year when you put them together.
Okay.
That leaves you with 2 more.
2 more. Okay.
So then if you do Introduction to Engineering Design, that's another 1. So that leaves you with 1 more.
Okay. So you're saying if he checks the intro to engineering and the intro to engineering design, they're the same.
It's the same. So it's just 1 class. Yeah. So just if it's confusing, just put the 1. I guarantee you that which one you pick, they're going to put them in the class.
Okay. Awesome. I got it. Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
Yeah, and I apologize. That I'm looking at. It's a little confusing. If they have it on one page, then they have it on the second page as well. On the second page, they're talking more about the programs and the first class in that program. Whereas on the first page, they're just focusing on these are the classes you have to graduate. So
okay.
I can understand why it's confusing.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, let me go back to here. All right. already did that. And we're about to, okay. So this page here, this is the graduation status report. The goal here is that hopefully this high school counselors are going over this form with your student every year. If they don't, I do suggest that you go over it with your child every year. It's usually the last page in the high school program of studies. And what this does is it kind of goes over all the classes they need to graduate. So they need, as you look at the top, they need 23 credits to graduate. They need 4 years of English. They need US history, LSN, world history. So technically only 3 years of history or social studies. They need 3 years of math to graduate, but they have to have math every year, like I said before. But they'll have the 1 geometry and 2 algebra. They have to have 3 credits or 3 lab sciences, including biology. They have to have a half a credit of PE or Fit for Life, half a credit of health. And then, like I said before, they'll also be taking the financial literacy and then health again in 11th grade. And then they have their fine art and their technology. And then on the other side here, you'll have your world language. And what I always tell students is when it comes to world language, if they want to go to a 4-year college straight out of high school, they have to go to at least 2 years of foreign language. But I'm going to say go 3 of the same and just kind of, because at this point, schools want you to have 3 or more. That's the reality of it. But for graduation purposes, it's 2 credits of the same, but definitely go for the third. Or they can go to CTE programs, and that's when we have all those CTE programs that we went over before, plus the ones that they've applied to at North Point or at McDonough. So again, the whole idea is they get to 23 credits. You're marking this off as you go along, all 4 years, to make sure there's no gaps so that they graduate, so your student can graduate on time. Okay, Ms. Beatty?
All right, so now we're going to go over how to select these courses in Student View. So once you and your student have filled out the paper form, you're going to go on their Student View account, and on the side, it's right above their grade book. It says Course Request. So you'll have your student click that, and once they click that, they'll go over to the blue button which says click here to change course requests. All right, so they'll click that, and a screen will pop up and it will show their core recommendations first. So, their math and language arts and all that. So they'll have to scroll down. And once they scroll down, they'll see elective courses. I would say the easiest thing to do, there's a search bar, would put the numbers so on the form you have the numbers for the course and then the course name. Each course ID, I would type that in. It'll just be really easy and it'll bring it right up. And then you can add your elective. So on the left side, it says add request. And then in the right, it says add alternate. Okay, so you are going to, once you find that class, however many electives, depending if you're who your student is, add your electives as add request, and then add your alternates as add alternate.
And as a
Right.
reminder, for anyone that's at Piccowaxen, students that are attending Piccowaxen next year, we're asking for 4 alternates. Anyone going to high school, they're asking for 3 alternates.
Yep. So once they're done that and they've chosen all their, the ones they want by hitting add request and choosing their alternates, they need to hit save. And then they'll be done. So again, that will open up on Monday and will be open through Friday. But obviously their paper forms are also due back by Friday. So again, as Mr. Marchioni said, trying to get those done, trying to get them in sooner so they don't lose the paper form would be great. But they can look at their paper form and choose the classes this week. But again, that will not open up on Synergy until next week, because I know I had some kids open it this week and it shows the core courses, but it won't let you pick any courses yet.
It's going back to, you want to do this one, Ms. Beatty?
Yeah, sure. So this is just going back to our students who will be at Piccowaxen next year, so for our 7th graders who are going to be 8th graders, they are able to take some classes that are high school credit courses. So if they took Spanish 1 this year, they can take Spanish 2 next year, or they can start Spanish 1. They can also take the Heritage and Native Spanish, the HNS Spanish, if the Spanish is spoken at home. So those are options. And then we have the Exploring Computer Science, which is open to all 8th graders. It's a full year course. And they earn 1 tech ed credit with that class. The other option is Intro to Engineering and Design. And for that one, you either have to be in Algebra 1 or Geometry in 8th grade. So you'll take one of those math classes simultaneously. But that's the prerequisite for it. You have to be in Algebra 1 or Geometry for 8th grade to be able to be in that class as well. And then these classes, they do they transfer on to high school. So they will affect the GPA for high school. They will go on their transcript, it will show up because it will be a high school credit class.
I definitely had a couple of students today when I told them that if they got a D in Spanish, that D is going to be on their transcript in high school. I got a couple of rolling. They were not happy with that. So, let's see the next one. Okay, so going back to this form. So this is just for students that are going to be at Piccowaxen next year. If you are someone that has a student going to high school, you're writing a letter saying you'd like to have a change and then attaching it to the course selection sheet. If you are someone that has a student coming here next year and you would like to make a change, the main reason I put this on here is because last year we had a lot of students going into 8th grade who really wanted to take Exploring Computer Science and wanted to take Introduction to Engineering Design, but because they were recommended for like a Lit Lab 4, they couldn't do it. So this is a way to having the parent fill out the form saying that they would rather have their child. So for example, they would go where it says Reading English Language Arts, the original recommended course, Lit Lab 4, the course being requested, let's say it's Exploring Computer Science. Reason for request, they want to take Exploring Computer Science to get the high school credit. You would send that to us. We would go over with the administration, and then we would see if it gets approved and go from there. Now, I say Lit Lab 4 because Lit Lab 4 is a lab class that does not have an intervention tied to it. Lit Lab 3 has some interventions tied to it. Lit Lab 2 have more interventions tied to it. And then Lit Lab 1, again, the lower you go, the more interventions that are tied to that class. So if someone wants to get out of a Lit Lab 1 to go into these classes, we're going to have more of a conversation because you're in those intervention classes for a reason. And we don't want to take away your intervention because we're trying to help support you. For math, it's a little different. Math Lab 3 supports students that are in accelerated math. Math Lab 2 supports students that are in grade level math. And Math Lab 1 is the only one that's really an intervention. So if the student wants to get out of a math lab, I'm more hesitant with the math lab because I feel like the math labs, they definitely do support those basic skills that you need, especially if you're in like Algebra 1. So I'm hesitant to take them out of a lab if it's supporting a student that's needs it for Algebra 1. But we can still have those conversations, and you would have to fill this form out to request that. Last year, we had students pick up the form while we were doing the individual meetings. This year, I thought it'd be easier. In the initial email that you were sent about this meeting, this is one of the attachments to that email. Important notes to remember, all PICO students will take 1 quarter of health, 1 quarter of PE. They could also choose to take a semester of PE if they want to. All 7th graders have the option to take Spanish. We already talked about that. HNS if it's spoken at home. Students will be able to choose up to 4 alternate electives if they're enrolled at Piccowaxen, and of course 3 if they're going into high school. The middle school program of studies is a great document that has a description of all the classes offered in middle school. So just like I was talking about the high school program of studies earlier for students going to high school, if you are someone that has a student here at Piccowaxen, please review the middle school program of studies But the middle school program of studies was at an attachment in the email we sent out earlier. And the high school program of studies is a link at the very bottom of that email. Okay. Again, all students must complete and return the paper course selection sheets, as Ms. Beatty said and I said multiple times, by Friday, February 7th, both in Synergy and the paper form to their social studies teacher. The last thing we want to go over, this is just because we were talking to students about this as we were going through classes. As outlined in the blueprint for Maryland's future, students need to be classified as college and career ready, or CCR, by the end of 10th grade. Okay. The way they identify students to be college and career ready is one of two ways. Option one, they are earning a grade point average of a 3.0 by the time they get to the end of 10th grade. Okay. And in addition to that, they have to earn an A, B, or C in their Algebra 1 class or score proficient in the MCAT for Algebra 1 or above. Okay, so that's option one. Option two is they score proficient or above in the English 10 MCAT, and also they score proficient in the Algebra 1 MCAT. So those are two ways that we recognize whether or not a student is college and career ready. If they are college and career ready, they want to have push students into one of three college and career ready pathways. And we have three different options in our county. Okay. Option one, students are doing early college, which means they are literally going into college full time in 12th grade and possibly 11th grade. Because I think at one point it was just 12th grade, then they moved it to 11th grade. And that they would be taking all college classes, but those college classes would count towards high school credit so they can graduate high school. This is done through CSM. And if they are in the early college program, they can do their sports and their clubs and things like that in their home school. Dual enrollment is when they are literally going to school for part of the day and then also taking classes at the college. So they're enrolled in both high school and college. Both of those would give them college credit. Option two is the career and technical education or CTE pathway. You get at this point, as parents, you know all about the CTE programs we have in the county, all those different programs we went over earlier, like the business program, the computer science program, the Project Lead the Way Biomed, Project Lead the Way Engineering, plus all the ones that students could have applied to earlier in the year that are at North Point or at McDonough. Those are all CTE programs. And then the third way is for those students that are in an advanced placement pathway, which means they're taking many advanced placement classes. AP classes are college level classes that they're taking at the high school. At the end of each of those classes, at the end of the year, they would take an AP test. And if they are successful in that test, they can earn college credit. So again, those are three different ways that students.
Hi.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you.
Okay. Ms. Farm, were you talking to me or just talking to? Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I just wasn't sure if you were asking a question. Okay, so that's the last piece of this presentation. So questions, and feel free to unmute yourself because that is totally fine. Any questions in the chat that we haven't answered already?
Mr. Marchioni?
Yes.
Hi, this is Mrs. Opperman.
Hi, Ms. Opperman.
I just have a quick question. In regards with Avery, he is only required to take 4 courses, his English, math, social studies, and science.
Okay.
So then that leaves him where he'll do a quarter of PE, a quarter of health, and then he'll do Art 3. So then that leaves him taking, I guess, if he does.
He has room for 3 full
3 full
blocks.
ones. Okay.
Yes.
So then if he did like Spanish, that's 1. And
Right.
then intro to engineering and design, that's 2.
That's 2.
But can he do exploring computer science as well?
You can't take both. It has to be one or the other.
So then what's his other option for?
Yes, all those other half-year classes that he can just combine together. So he can do any of those other classes. He can do any of the arts or any of the computer classes. Anything that's a semester class on there, he can take as the other options.
So it would have to be 2 more semester classes.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, but if he's already done computer science 2, he
Okay.
can't do that anymore.
That's a conversation that we're going to have with our, because since computer science is only offered to Miss Lewis, I know I haven't talked to you about this yet, but I want to have a conversation about it. So I don't want to say there's anything set in stone. Since computer science only has 2, and we've started a lot of students this year in the second level of computer science, I want to have a conversation with administration. If the student wants to, can they take computer science 1? So,
Okay.
yeah.
So then in that situation, what would I do for him? Because he's kind of like, he's already taken computer science 2 this year, and he's already done the gateway. So pretty much that just leaves him with the STEM labs.
The STEM labs, if there's art that he's interested in, journalism, if you'd like to try that. So there are options. There's PE, another semester PE. Might not be the thing for him, but that is an option.
Okay. And when will you know if he will be able to take computer science 1?
I'll have
Since
that
he's not-
conversation with them because it came up today. I just haven't had a chance to talk to our administration about it to see what they think.
Okay.
So our team will talk about it. It's nothing that's going to be set in stone right away. It probably will depend also on how the schedule kind of pans out when we get things going for the master schedule for next year.
Okay, so should I just put that down then as like an elective, like an alternative elective?
Put that down as an alternative for now, and then we can always come back to it later.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Any other questions? Happy to answer all of them.
I see some in the chat. Miss Duenas, I think you asked about placements. I don't know if you mean like what electives they'll get. It's really going to depend on if it fits in their schedule, because sometimes there'll be competing classes or it just won't really work. We try our best, that's why we have alternates. But sometimes, let's say they want intro to engineering, but they want this other elective, but they're at the same time. It just really depends on how it works in the master schedule.
I can say this with those high school level courses, we're going to do everything we can. That's what we did this year to give them that high school level course. That's like the priority for us. So we want to give them those credits, and that's the administration's mindset. They want to get those credits to them so they can have those going into high school.
Yeah.
So, there's no chance of not taking health. You have to have a health class.
You do.
Yes. So PE and health, it's a quarter of PE, a quarter of health. It's a state rule. It's nothing we can get away from. So they'd have to take PE, health is a half year, then art for the other half year. I'm looking at and then principles engineering will be another class full year, and then Spanish will be a class full year.
Okay, good. So he can take all of those.
Yeah.
Basically.
There's no way out of the two. You have to have a health every year you're in middle school, and you have to have PE every year you're in middle school.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Other questions? Did we get the ones that are a little further back? I guess so.
I think we did.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Marchioni.
Yes.
Hi, this is Michelle Campbell, Ethan Claggett's mom. So he has already taken the intro to engineering, and so he would, of course, take the fit for life and health, and then so I see on there it says college and career CTE pathway. Is that something that he would write in something from the back, like if he wanted to do introduction to computer programming?
So let me go back. Is it LaPlata or McDonough?
McDonough.
Sorry. Okay. So he's doing introduction to engineering. So is he going to take the second level of that class or no?
Are you going to take the second? Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Kasha, when he'll give the form to Mr. Kasha, he'll cross out the introduction to engineering that's on there and replace it with the class, the other class, the second class.
Okay.
Yeah. So
he won't write anything. We won't write anything in on the front where it says college and career CTE pathway, or
I'm going to have him write it on the back where it says project lead the way engineering.
Got it.
And have him cross out the introduction to engineering class and then write in the class that he wants him to take. And I'm going to talk to the high school about that because they need to know that that's something they kind of need to fix for next year.
Okay. Okay. Ethan, do you have any questions? Nope. Okay. Nope. Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
Hi, Mr. Marchioni.
Yes, ma'am.
With Brooklyn, with the PE for her, how
Mhm.
in advance, soon in advance, should I let you all know because she cannot take PE because of her health condition.
Got you. So
So
with that, I mean, obviously each year we want to definitely get that information ahead of time so we can figure it out.
okay,
In addition, we could talk to the PE department about alternative assignments and things of that nature. Because
okay,
technically everyone has to have it, you know that. But
yes,
there's ways around, like they'll have to figure out ways to give alternate assignments. And then, well, I'll have to have that conversation also with administration. But yes, if you want to get that to us in the summertime, this way we have it, then we can take it from there.
okay. That's what I'll do. Thank you.
Problem.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Hi, yes. So, in order, my son is a rising seventh grader. So, in order to take um, another elective, we're either going to have to not take the literacy lab 4 or math lab 3. And I heard you
Okay.
mention that you're hesitant about not enrolling them in math lab 3. And I just wanted to know more about that because that is actually the one I was thinking of not taking.
Well, I guess it all depends on your students' strengths. And
Okay.
if they are a strong math student, then I understand. But typically, those math classes, math labs really do help support those students to kind of build on those skills that they'll need, especially if they want to go into the higher level maths as they go through middle school. But every student's different, and some students maybe they don't need it there. They might want the extra support in the lit lab. So, does that answer your question? Sort of.
Hi, Mr. Marchioni.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Alicia. This is Christian Florima's mom.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm trying to understand the additional graduation requirement section. So
Mhm.
he'll take health and then those two classes, then technology education. Do I cross out intro to engineering here because he's already taken that class?
Is he taking the second one?
The principles, because he wants to do the pathway to
Okay. So
engineering.
then yes, Mr. Kasha will fill it in for him.
Okay, on this section. And then for fine arts, we'll have him do the orchestra. Does he choose orchestra honors?
That's a conversation that he needs to have with Miss Miser.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then for the college and career CT pathway, I guess it's a little confusing between the technology education part and then the
Yeah.
yeah, so
So basically, it's the same class. So
okay.
if they are choosing the Introduction to Engineering Design, the second class,
Mm-hmm.
just put it on the second page because that's kind of part of that whole pathway. And
Okay.
that's fine because I'm not sure why they did two like that, but I'm gonna ask them when I talk to them about the engineering why it's on the front and the back. So
Okay. And does he need to have a conversation with his Spanish teacher? Because the options that I see is Spanish 1 and 2, which he's taken Spanish 1 and 2 already. So then Spanish 3, is that honors or is that a different high school
no,
level, like 1 and
it's
2?
honors. Once you get into three, it's an honors class.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean if he's passing it and doing well, then that should be fine.
Okay. All right. I think we've got it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Anybody else?
Mr. Marchioni, I'm sorry, I have one more question.
As many as you want. It's fine.
Can a child take STEM Lab 1 and STEM Lab 2 in the same school year, even though they're semesters? Like semester 1 take STEM Lab 1 and then the second semester STEM Lab 2?
That is the first time someone's asked that question yet. So during all our presentations. So I'm going to defer that to Ms. Lewis. We might have to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
Makes sense, but it only have to work out if let's say the teacher's not teaching STEM 2 the second semester, then that wouldn't work. So it all depends on when teachers are teaching these classes. And then that's a great question because again, we haven't thought of every little thing. That's definitely something that we'll have to discuss to see what we're going to need to do.
Okay. I just thought of it because I'm trying to think of another elective and he has to do like semester electives. So I was thinking, well, could he do both of those since he can't do a full year? He's got to have 2 semester ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a conversation that we'll have. I can't answer until we sit down and have a conversation about it.
And
Okay.
I don't know if he's taken GTT, but I know a lot of the student, so he's taken both of those.
Yeah, he took
Okay.
sixth grade. He took, I guess it was the design and modeling, and
Okay.
seventh grade he's taken the automation and the
All right.
robotics.
Gotcha.
And then
Okay.
going into eighth grade, he doesn't need to take the math lab or the lit lab. So that's why I'm kind of like, oh, he's got to take another elective and trying to find one that he's able to do.
And he's already going to be taking either the introduction to engineering design or the exploring computer science.
He wants to do the intro to engineering and design next year, but you had said previously he can't do exploring computer science simultaneously with that.
You have to do one or the other. That's that's
where he's kind of like he's got to do a semester, pick 2 electives for a semester, half semester. Sorry.
Gotcha. Like I said, we'll have to get back to you on that. That's a good question. If they could take the 1 and then the 2, like even with any class, that is. Let's say I take Art 1 first semester, then I take Art 2 second semester. Can I do that? That's a good question. We're going to have to discuss as a team.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Hi, Mr. Marciani. It's Tracy Murphy again. I'm sorry. One more quick question.
Go ahead.
So, taking out the math lab, and then if you have the 3, like the band and Spanish and the engineering design, then if for some reason you determine that you wanted to change that because it's already been written on here that because he's going into Algebra 1.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that can be changed at some point, or is that kind of once you're in, you're in?
So I'm sorry, say the question again. I apologize.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, if I drop that math lab and he's going into Algebra 1, is that something that, I mean, I guess he could always get extra assistance if needed, but.
Typically, if they drop the lab, we don't want to put them back in the lab. Like once you drop it, you drop it. If anything, stick with the lab, see how you're doing, and if they realize it's really not working, then remember you have the first 10 days of school to request a change. So if they're in the lab and they realize, you know what, I don't need this, then you could put that request in that same form within the first 10 school days, and then we can have that conversation with administration.
Okay, and when we're entering everything into student view, how do we, if we want to drop that, how do we notate that in student view, or is it only on the paper form?
It's only on the paper form. It's only on the paper request. We can't just drop it. It's something that we have to do on our end.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? There's no other questions. We're going to wrap this up. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. The goal is to record. Well, this is recording anyway. So we'd like to send this out, the actual video, along with the PowerPoint that we're using today, so you have that as a resource. You all have a good night. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right.